Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me as always, my co-host, Stephen Young of Roto Grinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And this week, we're previewing the Würth 400 at Texas Motor Speedway here on Running Hot. Last weekend at Talladega, Austin Cindric locked himself into the playoffs with a close win over Ryan Preece and Kyle Larson. Preece was eventually disqualified, as was Joey Logano. That Preece disqualification elevated Kyle Larson to second, and Kyle Larson's teammate William Byron to third. So, Stevie, a lot of talk on Twitter again about the racing. Talladega for the fourth straight week in Jeff Gluck's Good Race poll, the race came in under 50%. Curious your thoughts on Talladega.
I don't know. It's kind of what super speedway racing is right now. Fuel saving. It looks really cool when you're watching them go 3 or 4 wide. But we know that, I mean, they're 1.5 seconds off of the pace, what it should actually be. And I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if here's how you fix it. This is my proposal to NASCAR. Add a stage to the race, and then don't do where you don't have any green flag stops. So 40 lap runs, add a stage, make it a 120 lap race. There you go. Super speedway's fixed. Like the most exciting thing that happened all race was, them coming down pit road. We don't want that. We want the excitement to be on the track. And do you blame Larson and Byron for the end of that race? No, you can't. They both have wins. They're in a great position. Let's get out of Talladega with a really good points day. Larson was pushing as hard as he could push, and there's just no separation where, this car on super speedways needs work. Did I like it? Overall, I don't need a bunch of wrecks to like Talladega and Daytona. I just don't want the most exciting part of Talladega and Daytona to be coming on pit road. That's where I'm at.
I want the cars to be able to make their own moves, right? We saw in the Gen 6 car, guys like Bubba Wallace saying, man, we get such monster runs here. They were able to use the draft to make moves. And you just can't do that with this car, in my opinion. You need help. That's the only way you can make moves is to get help. And look, if Kyle Larson or William Byron pull out a line, right behind them was other Fords that were just going to go with their Ford teammates, so they would have been hung out to dry. There was no way for them to hook up because they were next to each other. So there's no way for Larson and Byron to hook up because they're literally side by side. And just with the way these things are 2x2, you can't get the Chevys to hook up there. So one of them has to pull out a line. If they do, they're just going to get freight trained by, Joey Logano was right behind, I think it was Byron, for example, on the outside line there. He would have just gone with Preece. So, it's tough. I will say when it was a little bit of victim of circumstance, with 2 Fords in front and then 2 Chevys right behind them. And then, Ford in the mix right behind those guys is the circumstances didn't play well for getting a third lane involved. Whereas in stages 1 and 2 at the end, I thought, in addition to coming to pit road, I thought the stage 1 end was really exciting.
It was
because we had ways of breaking up those 2 main lines so that third line could form and we got a 3 wide stage finish, that kind of thing. But the circumstances weren't right to break them up at the end there of the end of the race. But that said, we were just riding those last however many laps until we got to that point where there wasn't any way to break up those lines anyway. So I agree with you. I think not a terribly exciting Talladega race. And I hope NASCAR looks into some ways to improve the racing with this car in super speedways. So with that said, we go from one fast track to another fast track, but in this case, we're not really getting the drafting races, but it is Texas Motor Speedway, a 1.5-mile track, probably along with Michigan, 2 of the fastest tracks on the circuit that are not drafting track races. Texas, like I said, 1.5-mile oval, relatively recently paved, had that reconfiguration repave in the 2015-2016 off season between those seasons. So, tire wear is pretty minimal here. Talk about racing at Texas, Stevie.
after Talladega, I'm kind of excited to go to a 1.5, and I don't think that ever happened with the last car. So, racing at Texas is very interesting with this next gen car. It's really hard to pass the leader. We've seen that be where we have really big like track position type races. So that's tough at Texas. Racing should overall be really solid. I know they're trying a new left side tire that we've seen a couple times this year that is supposed to wear a little bit more, and maybe that puts it in the driver's hands a little bit more. But overall, I think the cars that we expect to be fast are going to be fast this weekend. And that's typically what we've seen on these 1.5s. I mean, it's a handful of drivers outside of like circumstance at the end of the race that have been in the mix to win these races.
Yeah, I think it's tough though because Texas is mostly a one groove racetrack, especially with the way they kind of, I wouldn't say messed the track up, but did some things with resonance stuff that have kind of stuck with the track over the years and made it a one groove track, made it really hard to pass. We saw Zane Smith running fifth like the whole race last year until he got caught out by that untimely yellow during the pit sequence. And so if you can just get track position, you can just keep it. I think like last year, it seemed to me like only Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was able to make moves through the field. That's kind of just how this race went. And if you had track position, you just kept it. So this is going to be very much a track position race, in my opinion. Maybe the left side tire helps a little bit, but at the same time, the surface is still so new that I don't really think the tire is going to wear all that much. So I think it's just going to be a lot more of the same. That's what I think anyway. I guess we'll have to see once we get to practice. As far as evaluating Texas, how are we handicapping this? I know there's other mile and a halfs as far as like maybe comparable tracks, but I think Texas is kind of unique with some of the stuff that we talked about, the reconfiguration, the repave, the new surface, and then kind of making it a one groove track with messing it up there. So to me, Texas is kind of unique, which is weird to say about a mile and a half track.
Yeah, I think the one groove is kind of what like takes away, because I mean it's a large oval, so you could potentially compare it to like Charlotte and Kansas, but both of those racetracks have multiple grooves, and you see a lot more passing at those racetracks. It's fast like Michigan, and Michigan is another large oval type of track. So like those are the tracks that we're gonna like group Texas with as far as like data. You could probably even throw in a little bit of Las Vegas, but Las Vegas tire wear is becoming more and more of a thing that like it's just becoming like distant to Texas more and more. So practice, like that's what you're looking at. Like practice is so important this weekend. 1.5 mile like speed definitely matters, and those tracks, like I said, I'll throw those tracks in there. But I'm with you. I don't think that like there's a perfect comp to this racetrack anymore because of the one groove and how this racetrack kind of plays out.
Yeah, so it's going to make it interesting. It's going to make it tough to evaluate because, the only true mile and a half we've had, I mean, obviously we had Homestead, but that's so different. The only other real true mile and a half we've had is Vegas. But like you said, multiple grooves at Vegas, more tire wear. So just a little bit different of an environment at Vegas versus Texas. So, you can just go off current form, current speed, I think is the other way to kind of just handle things here. But yeah, I think just with track position being so important, I think that's going to be the main thing, which means practice is going to be certainly a focus in qualifying as well. Any other things you got here, for Texas, just some intangibles?
I mean, with one groove racetracks, we always got to talk about, how good your pit crew is, because if you lose pit road, if you lose spots on pit road, it could hurt you. That kind of hurt Tyler Reddick last year. I mean, his pit crew put him in a couple bad situations last year at this race. Like, I think both of us will kind of agree that Reddick and Larson were the best cars here last year. And if you look at, those two guys that had the most issues on pit road. I mean, Larson, they didn't tighten a tire when the guy was dominating the race, and he never got back up there. This was the race that I got Larson at, like, I forget what it was like 50 or something. It was something crazy when he was getting his lap, like he had both of his laps back, and like he was getting back on the lead lap, and it was still like available at 50-1. And I was like, oh, I'm taking a shot on this. Live betting Texas is fun, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson were the two best cars last year, and pit road kind of messed them up. Chase wasn't the best car, but pit road helped him. So Pit road is something that I definitely think you want to look at going into the race. Hendrick has been incredible on pit road this year. Denny Hamlin's team has been incredible on pit road this year. So just, yeah, I mean, practice is, we talk about it every week, but practice is huge when we go to a 1.5 like this. That's going to be our number one thing that you and I are going to look at heading into the race weekend. But I think when you're looking at this race as a whole, definitely kind of just check and see, like, if you have a tiebreaker situation, maybe lean the better pit crew.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I think, pit crew and just strategy. This is going to be a massive strategy race. We see at Texas, because track position is so important. Teams are always trying to game the system to get track position, whether it's pitting early in the pit sequence to, make use of clean air and new tires. Even though they don't wear, there's a little bit you can gain from new tires if you are able to leapfrog 1 or 2 positions on pit road that way. But then others will extend it long, hoping to catch that caution and not having to pit under green. And others will just split it right in half. So strategy is going to become very important, and it's going to be, when does the caution fall? That could affect so much. So when strategy is important, you look at those teams and drivers that like to utilize strategy a lot, and maybe look at them as a top 10 candidate, something like that, underdog top 10 candidate. And then also just kind of, again, leads to more live betting, as you said, if you can figure something out under a caution, and maybe certain books have or haven't closed their odds. I think that's going to be an interesting way to play things. But yeah, not a whole lot as far as, data to work with here going into Texas, aside from just Texas track history. But we do still have some bets, so let's get to those. We're going to drive through the race stage by stage. Stevie and I will give a pick each in stage 1 as our shorter odds bet. Then we'll give a pick in stage 2 for our longer odds bet. Finally, going to race through stage 3 and end up in victory lane. So it's time to throw the green flag on the Würth 400 and fire off for stage 1. All right, stage 1, Stevie, top 10 pick for you here.
Yeah, I mean, Brad Keselowski, top 10, plus 140 if you're in the Hard Rock area where you have like advantage of this. Luckily, this is like one of the times that I actually like Hard Rock, and there's another bet on here that I really like Hard Rock. But to be honest, not showing a ton of value on a lot of stuff this week. I'm looking at Keselowski because, I mean, this guy's finished inside the top 10 all 3 races with the next gen car here. He ranks inside the top 10 in speed here with the next gen car. Even last year, he wasn't great, but he got way better as the race kind of progressed. So I think that that's a good thing to kind of lean on, because Vegas wasn't great for him, but they made a lot of adjustments. They got track position, and we talk about aggressive strategy. Matt McCall, one of the most aggressive crew chiefs on pit road. Keselowski doesn't have a win this year, so if there's an opportunity for strategy, again, I'm going to kind of look at practice data before I start betting outrights this week, but I think Keselowski at plus money here for a top 10 is one that definitely I have some value on.
Yeah, it makes sense. And there's actually plus 150 at the time we're recording this at DraftKings as well.
Nice.
So if you have that available to you, certainly grab that. And, I'm looking back at Texas data, and if we go all the way back to 2022, Keselowski and Buescher were both really good. They were turning laps inside, among the fastest laps of the race. And as you mentioned, Brad Keselowski, top 10 in every next-gen Texas race. So I think that makes sense. Brad Keselowski, top 10. For my stage 1 pick, I mentioned how Keselowski and Buescher are among some of the drivers making fastest laps. Well, I'm going to go to a fastest lap bet, for the race fastest lap. And I'm also going to go to the most fastest laps. And for both of those, I'm going to take Tyler Reddick. He's 9-1 in each category. 9-1 to have the race's fastest lap, and 9-1 to turn the most fastest laps in the race. If we look at 2022, Tyler Reddick had 7 of the top 12 fastest laps in the race. 2023, he didn't, but he encountered some problems. And, a lot of the race fastest laps in 2023 were late in the race. So he didn't have his track position, didn't have the best situation there, but he did win stage 1 in that race in 2023. But then in 2024, Tyler Reddick had the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th fastest laps of the race. Didn't achieve the fastest lap, but had 4 of the top 5. Only Kyle Larson with 1 faster lap than Reddick among the top 5 there. So when you got a guy that's just consistently putting out fast laps at a track and winning stages and things like that, I think you got to take him in that fastest lap market. To me, it's going to be, as you mentioned last year, Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson were the two best. Well, if we go back in history and just in terms of fastest laps, like I said, in 2022 it was Reddick. He had 7 of the top 12. 2023 was the Larson show. He had the top 8 fastest laps, the top 7 fastest laps. And then 2024 was a split between Larson and Reddick at the top of the board for a chunk of fastest laps there. So it's those two guys, and Larson's like 3.5 to 1 and 4 to 1 in these markets, and Reddick's 9 to 1. So give me Tyler Reddick, fastest lap, most fastest laps.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at the data, he has the second most here in the next gen car behind Kyle Larson, who had, I mean, you look at even last year when so the race got moved from, later in the season to April last year, and it's going to make a difference. It's definitely hotter in the fall race than it is, for this race this weekend. So, I mean, that matters a little bit, but yeah, I mean, just looking at the data, I mean, you and I are probably going to continue to agree on this, but it's probably going to come down to Larson versus Reddick for fastest laps. And all it takes is track position. Whoever is leading is probably going to rack up the fastest laps. And Reddick is typically really good at qualifying, as is Kyle Larson. So, yeah, I mean, I think for what you're getting this at, go for it at 9 to 1 when you think that it's going to be between him and maybe 2 or 3 other drivers overall. That you're showing value at 9 to 1 for sure.
And here's the thing, right? Going from last year to this year, there's no change to the bodies of these cars. We didn't introduce a new Chevy body or a new Toyota body or a new Ford body like we did going from 2023 to 2024 when both Ford and Toyota had new bodies. So there should be a lot of consistency, a lot of carryover from last year. And if we look at the fastest laps last year, like I said, with Larson and Reddick, if we look at the other guys that were popping up there, it was William Byron, it was Chase Elliott, it was Denny Hamlin. So, HMS Chevys and 2311/JGR Toyotas. So I think, if you're looking at the fastest laps, you should be looking at those teams, manufacturers most specifically. But then, of course, I think you got to give the nod to Reddick and Larson as the ones that would be the most likely within those teams and manufacturers to turn the fastest lap. So stage 1, Stevie has Brad Keselowski for a top 10 finish at plus 140, plus 150 if you have DraftKings. And I have Tyler Reddick, fastest race lap and the most fastest laps, 9 to 1 each at DraftKings. So we're going to throw the green and white checkered on stage 1, fill up, refuel, get some new tires, and fire off for stage 2. All right, second stage, Stevie. Instead of top 10, now you're going top 5. What do you have?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a Hard Rock bet, but it's Ryan Blaney, top 5, plus 260. And I just checked. I'm hoping this stays up for everybody to get it, take advantage of. Hard Rock doesn't move their lines very often for NASCAR pre-practice and qualifying. So I think there's a good chance that, if you're listening to this, you could take advantage of this, but this is just mispriced. I know this isn't the best track for Ryan Blaney, and that's fine. I'm betting this based off of value and how good he's been this year. I mean, there's so many times we've gone to fast racetracks this year, and Ryan Blaney has been the topic of conversation, and he's had some really bad luck. But, I mean, this guy should probably have 3 or 4 wins this year with the speed that he's had. So the fact that we're getting this at plus 260, my model thinks it's the most, the highest value bet early in the week here. And you're seeing in most places plus 120 to plus 150. So it's just mispriced, and I'm taking advantage of being in Florida for once and not, having the short end. So, yeah, I mean, again, this is just based off of what he's had speed-wise. He has one top 5 in the 3 races here in the next-gen era, but he's been incredibly fast. His pit crew's been great this year. So I think that this is a 20-25 speed bet and value at plus 260.
I actually think Texas is a good track for Ryan Blaney. If we look since that repave, 2017 was his second full-time season at Wood Brothers Racing, his second full-time season. He dominated that first Texas race on that configuration, the new, the current configuration we have. Finished 12th, had some bad luck there to finish 12th. But then later that year, he finished 6th with Wood Brothers. Then he moved on to Penske in 2018, finished 5th and 2nd. Next year in 2019 at a DNF, and then finished 8th. Year after that, we went to Texas twice still, 7th and 4th. Right. So, I mean, this has been a great track for him historically. He's maybe had a little bit of bad luck in the next gen era, but even in the next gen era, first race here, he finished fourth, then had a DNF in 2023, and again had bad luck in 2024. So, I think it's a strong track for Ryan Blaney. And you mentioned he's been great everywhere this year. He's had a lot of bad luck. He leads the series in DNFs, but 3 of those 4 DNFs have been not of his own doing. So, I think this is a solid bet. And, 260 is absolutely crazy when everywhere else he's longest plus 130. So if you have Hard Rock, get Ryan Blaney, top 5 plus 260. For my stage 2 pick, you mentioned one driver that's finished top 10 in every next gen race. There's another guy that's finished top 10 in every Texas next gen race, and that's Chase Briscoe. He is 22-1 at the time we're recording this at Caesars. The odds actually came down. So if he's back up at 22-1, still grab that for Chase Briscoe. If you only have 20-1 available to you, I'll be on that as well. But 22 right now, if you can get that. I think the Canby books also have 22-1. So should be some multiple places there with a 22 number for Chase Briscoe. But like I said, he's finished inside the top 10 in every next gen Texas race. And Chase Briscoe is, a guy that I think has a lot of speed. He's a driver that, when we're looking at the things that matter in the next gen era, which is usually track history and equipment, he has those things now. He has the equipment. He's got the JGR equipment now, and he's got the track history. So, I was building a model, interestingly enough, Stevie, and this is a little bit of an quote intangible that I didn't bring up at the top here, but I took every race that was on a non-drafting and non-dirt oval and since 2005, since loop data started in 2005, and I just popped it all into a model. I said, run a model that finds the most significant variables and to predict finishing position. So I did that, and then I plotted the predicted finishing position versus the actual finishing position year by year. And so far, 2025 has been the least predictable year of the 21 years of racing since loop data came out. So this has been the least predictable year. Well, when that happens, you can be a little bit more inclined to take long shots. So I don't mind taking 22-1 on a long shot on a driver that's getting really good equipment, has great track history here. And this is a track position race. If he gets the track position, he's probably keeping it, Chase Briscoe here. So I think this is a spot where I actually am almost looking at Texas a little bit like we would look at a Talladega or a Daytona and thinking like, where can I find some long shot value? And I think at least for the win, look at drivers in good equipment. Your Alex Bowmans, your Chase Briscoes, maybe even an Austin Cindric, a Daniel Suarez, that type of stuff. If they get Daniel Suarez just finished second at Las Vegas because he had track position. Josh Berry won it. Ryan Preece finished third because they had track position. And that was where tires mattered more. In a race where tires matter less and it's one groove, if any of these good drivers and good equipment get track position, they're going to win the race, in my opinion. If you have track position with 30 to go, I think you're going to win, especially in one of the most, arguably the least predictable race in the last, or season, I should say, in the last 21 years. So, I'm going to take a long shot here on Chase Briscoe.
Yeah, I mean, JGR was really fast here. Last year, Ty Gibbs was really fast in that race. Martin Truex Jr. was really fast towards the end until the end of the race. He didn't have the best last stage, but it was a track position thing. So I think they're going to have a really good starting point. 23:11 was really fast here last year. So
Hamlin
JGR and Toyota
fastest laps, like I was talking about, in terms of like just raw fastest laps of the race. He and Reddick were the two Toyotas up there.
Yeah, I mean, just Toyota is going to have a really good starting point to start the weekend. And you and I are both high on Chase Briscoe just in general this year. And I mean, he has the third best average finish here in the next gen car, and we are bumping up his equipment a lot. So yeah, I'm in on this, but I can't bet it at 15-1 in Florida. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind this.
Yeah, I think you need probably like at minimum an 18, 20, but 22-1. And like you said, value's hard to find this week, so it's pretty thin. But I do like Chase Briscoe 22-1 if you can get that number. So stage 2 is down. We're going to drive through stage 3 here. We're going to drive through that and end up in Victory Lane. And Like we talked about, Stevie, a little tough to find value this week so early on, and with the way Texas is and with the way books have priced things. So, Stevie, what do you think for Victory Lane? What we got to talk about here?
Yeah, I mean, we are always upfront and, honest and, when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I just, neither one of us are showing a ton of value to start the week. So I think this week you're betting a lot of outrights and stuff post qualifying, post practice, and live betting. I mean, I think live betting might be the best value this week. So try to find somebody that maybe qualifies a little bit down, and or just a pit cycle, like have your apps open during pit cycles and like try to take advantage of a fast car or something along those lines. But yeah, I mean, we don't have anything as far as like actual bet for Victory Lane this week. You and I, we tried, we really did. We tried and we tried and we tried, and it's just,
we talked about it.
yeah. I mean, there's just nothing that's like, you have to bet this. I mean, it's just one of those weeks.
There's nothing I'm like, God, you got to bet this. Even my 2 stage picks, like, I like them, but I'm not like, man, these are slam dunks, right? So I'm with you. I think post-practice qualifying, we get my flags data, for example. I think that's going to be really useful. And then just seeing who is actually able to pass for one. And I noticed last year early on, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was one of the drivers I was able to pass. He was making moves, one of the few that could pass frequently. So if you see a driver that's able to pass, maybe look at that for a live bet. I live bet Ricky 150 to 1 last year. And he then ended up running inside the top 8 or 6 most of the race until, like Zane Smith, getting caught out on that pit cycle. Bad luck, but you never know if he was going to get caught on the good side of that pit cycle. He may have been leading the race. So look for something like that in live betting, and post-practice and qualifying betting, I think, is going to be the best value this week. But I also have one more Victory Lane pick. This is a solo Victory Lane pick, and Stevie, it's on the IndyCar side of things. Remember, we're a motorsports betting podcast for our listeners here. So I'm going to throw out a Victory Lane pick for IndyCar. And if you have Bet365, there's a matchup between 2 Andretti global drivers, Colton Herta and Kyle Kirkwood. For those of you who know me, you know I'm a big Kyle Kirkwood fan, but I am taking Colton Herta -110 over Kyle Kirkwood. Colton Herta is a master of qualifying in the rain, and there is potential rain in the forecast for Saturday qualifying. And I just fancy Colton Herta a little bit more, specifically at Alabama as well, which is a natural terrain road course. But both Colton and Kyle are better on the streets, and Andretti as a whole is better on the streets. But I just fancy Colton a little bit more on this track type than Kyle. Add in the rain factor for potential rain in qualifying, and I'll take Colton Herta -110 over Kyle Kirkwood in qualifying for the Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama in the IndyCar Series. So that is going to do it. Thanks for listening to the Würth 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. If you'd like to tail some of the bets we discussed today, look for the quick slip link in the podcast and video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet now. We'll be back next week to talk bets for the Advent Health 400 at Kansas Speedway on behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.